at the Ottawa River Muskie Factory.
Good evening and welcome to the Suick Seminar Series, episode number 5, 2026. Our show today is called Hunting Big Muskies, how to plan to catch your personal best in 2026 with the weatherman, Davin Heinbuck. I promise, no matter what your level of muskie experience is, you will learn something that will help you be more successful this year coming up if you stay tuned for the next hopefully just an hour and a half today. Davin is one of my very favorite muskie presenters. I go to school with him every single time I see him. Can't wait to go to school with him again today. My name is John Anderson. I'm the owner of the Ottawa River Muskie Factory, and I'm the only one of our panel people today who has not caught a fish. Noah just barely got off the water in time for this seminar. He was out exploring, being right up to date on water temperatures and conditions, because our muskie season is not far away. You need to know that stuff to be able to hunt, and he came across a little muskie while throwing for pike earlier today.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Say hi, Noah.
We were out for about 2 hours, and we got two little pike. We had one good sized fish follow up to the boat, couldn't bite. And then sure enough, I got probably a little over 40-inch muskie on a little Williams wobbler spoon. So
wow.
they're right up in the bays. I would say they're probably spawning right now with what the water temps are at. So
yeah, we're a couple weeks away from the season opener here in Ottawa. Things are well behind in Eastern Ontario, a couple weeks behind. So that's the kind of thing you'd expect. Our other panelist and regular, Brent Bocek from Fishing NV and the Ottawa River Muskie Factory, is just coming back from a salmon charter as we speak. So he's going to burst onto the scene in a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
in a couple of minutes, hopefully. So I do have a few trophy catches though in the past week that I wanted to share. They're kind of unusual. They're highly unusual. I'll say that. So if you got a picture, I'd love to put it up. It's a brag shot.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, that is a great horned owl chick, 8 to 9 weeks old. I was out on a bird banding bucket list trip in Saskatchewan, chasing great horned owls and ferruginous hawks. We covered about 400 miles in 2 days. We banded 20 birds. That's one of the chicks. You have to be able to run farther than they can fly. And at 8 to 9 weeks, that's about as much as they have. So that's one of the trophy shots. If you got a second one.
Yeah.
Noah?
I was going to say, with wings that big, I'm impressed with how far you can run, John.
Yeah, pretty determined and pretty motivated chasing one of those, and yeah, and so that was the picture I went to get. It was a really active week, and I feel really blessed to have participated in that. That's a couple of great horned owl chicks again, 8 weeks old, 8 to 9 weeks old.
Wow.
Tell by different growth in their anatomy, and a final chick shot. And that's what I mean by a chick shot. Nothing sexist there. a real chick shot. And that's about a 12 or 13-day-old ferruginous hawk, the biggest member of the hawk family, one that grows feathers right down onto its claws. An absolutely spectacular bird. So that's my trophies. I have not reeled in a fish yet. Been way too busy working, but at least you and Brent are holding up the end for the team. That's great to hear.
I mean, those are some pretty cool birds.
I'm
going to do that one day.
I gotta say, I was as pumped chasing those as I was on any muskie trip for a long time. So, very high end. I got to give Davin a proper introduction before we bring him out. And so this is a guy who's going to take science and tell you how to use it to your advantage when you go hunting. Davin is a weatherman. He's an acting hydrologist. He's the general manager of one of Ontario's 36 conservation authorities. We'll talk about what exactly that is with him. For the last 24 years, he's the keeper of the Muskies Canada log data program for over 20 years. He's a number cruncher, and we're going to give you some hard data about new moons, full moons, weather patterns, what produces the biggest fish, where and when to go for the biggest fish. And he's got over 70 plus 50-inch fish in his boat to date so far. So no matter what your level of muskie fishing is, I promise you will go away smarter at the end of today. As always, our show is interactive. We will engage. We're going to turn a lot of the show over to Davin and just sit and listen because he's that good. But along with our questions, we encourage you. It's an interactive program. No matter where you're watching us from, send in your questions. Noah's going to pick out one or two every now and then. We have 5 or 6 breaks in Davin's presentation, so we will get the good questions in, and if we don't answer them on the show, you know we're going to get back to you in the next few days. So without further ado, a very special and I should mention, before I bring out our very special guest, our very, very special guest, I guess our boss in a way, Mr. Mike Suick himself is going to be on the seminar series to close it out with us for the last 10 or 15 minutes. So can't wait to have Mike on. We did a great show with him last year, and terrific as always. So
that was a pretty cool show last year, talking about the history of Suick and how far it goes back and all that. So
yeah, if you guys if you're watching now and you haven't seen that show, go find it on our YouTube channel. It'll still be there. There are some historical photos that will blow you away in that presentation. Shots I've never seen before. Some really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So now, without further...
One more thing. I want to tell everyone, Davin sent me a few slides that we're going to share up here. And like you said, he's a weatherman. And when I first opened those slides and I was going through them, I honestly was jaw dropped, and there were things in there that I just never thought of before and never looked at in that perspective. So it's definitely going to be a good learning curve for no matter what level of muskie fishermen you guys are. So
you know what weather hindcast? You know what weather forecasting is? Do you know what hindcasting is and how to use that in your muskie fishing? If you don't, stay tuned because Davin's going to tell you all about it.
All right.
Without further ado, Davin.
Hey, what a great introduction. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Oh, man. The pleasure
How do I live up to that and follow those great horned owls?
No, I've had I've had the pleasure of listening to you, I don't know, 5 or 6 times now. Every single time I go away, scratching my head, just like Noah going, I hadn't thought of that before, you know? I don't use that in my muskie forecasting or deciding where exactly I should be. So really a treat to have you here, Davin. Thanks for joining us today.
It means a lot coming from you, John.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate it. So
we have one more guest that's here and ready to go. Mr. Brent Bocek. What's up, Brent?
Hey guys, how are you? Better late than never, right? Let me fix this here.
How is the fishing?
It was good. We ended up landing 15 salmon today.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
fantastic. 15 salmon. Is that a good day this time of year? I know you were blowing out yesterday, so still pretty windy today too. Yes.
Oh no, today it's beautiful here. So, as you guys know, when you're a fishing guide, you don't make money when your boat's tied to the dock. So I had to cancel yesterday because of the wind, and we were able to get people out today. So that's why I'm a little bit late. But hey, we're here, and I'm excited to listen to Davin.
Yeah, the fishing charter pays you just a little bit more than the Suick Seminar Series salary is. So that's totally understandable. We get that. Congratulations. 15's a good day. I'm the only one, me and Davin, the only two who haven't reeled in a fish today. That's pretty cool.
Nice one, Brent.
I didn't reel one in either.
Guides don't catch fish. That's right. We take credit for them, We take credit for them, but we don't catch them.
Yeah.
That's true. So you want to get right into the slideshow, because we got a lot of information today, and as I said, we're just happy to sit and listen to Davin. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. So let's get rolling with it. I know it's gonna be interactive. There's gonna be lots of conversation throughout, and I don't mind breaking up the conversation or my presentation. I'd rather it be a discussion than a presentation, to be honest. So what we're going to look at today is really, I want to talk about some real weather basics. Talk about how that drives fish movements. Sometimes it's the weather, sometimes it's not. We're going to get into edges. We're going to spend some time on that. The various wedges could be weather, environment, structure, solunar, and we're really going to focus a bit at the end to wrap it up with you and how you can be the ultimate edge. And really, it's just about being efficient is being effective. So what we'll do, we can jump to the next slide, and we'll get right into the kind of basic formula here. And this may be new to some, may not be new to some, but I remember this one as a kid. So I'm going back about 35 years ago, the first time I saw this formula from the Ian Fisherman. And it was fish. So knowing your fish, the location, the presentation, you put those three together and you get success. And totally agree. I think that holds up and stands true to today. But the one piece that I want to talk about a little bit more here is actually changing the formula to the next slide, where we talk about knowledge. And if we use the knowledge in location and presentation, we actually take the fish. We know about the fish. We understand if we're going fishing to be successful, we have to know what we're after. We have to know the body of water, a little bit about the fish biology, their feeding habits, spawning time, spawning locations, summer spots, fall migration, wintering areas, things like that are very important to our success. Also, we rely a lot on history and experience, and that's going to drive some of the personal edges a little later in this presentation. But where I really want to focus on the knowledge piece and add maybe hopefully something to your arsenal today, or to your tackle box, we'll say, is weather. Talk a bit about the environment. That's where we see the edges come into play. Having an awareness and the instinct. And a lot of that awareness is actually instinctual as well. So we'll build upon that as we move through. On the next slide. And yeah, we're going to talk about weather, and we're going to forecast fishing success here. So the basics now to start, really take a real big step back. And again, I'm not actually a trained meteorologist in my job, and I think we'll talk a little about that in a bit. But for my career for many years was flood forecasting, which meant we have to understand how to read forecasting maps and using those as tools to predict when we're expecting rain and how much rain we're expecting, the location we're expecting to get the rain. So all this played very well into development of my fishing. So if we want to talk about weather, the real kind of simple basic thing to understand is that weather moves and is driven by air masses. What we typically see across the continent of North America is the movement of high and low pressure systems. These are very common. You've probably seen these weather maps before at the nightly news or whatever. But a couple of key things to take away from these is that we have low pressure and high pressure. Low pressure spins cyclonic. So that's counterclockwise. And it always spins towards the center of the low, depending on which side of the low you're on. So it's rotating and the wind's moving inwards. High pressure is the opposite to that. Right? It's spinning clockwise. And just by looking at a map that has a low and high pressure system, you can actually start creating your own forecasts and expectations as to what that advancing system might look like, and might actually how that might impact your water or your vacation or your fishing trip. And ultimately, that's going to drive the wind direction. So if we look at any forecast, what those models are picking up on is the movement of these systems. And it's trying to anticipate, based on how fast those systems are moving, the direction those systems are moving, what that wind direction is going to be. And that's why they can be fairly accurate on wind direction, 3 for sure, even 5 days out. 7 days gets a little tricky. I don't put a whole lot of faith in anything in the 7+ day range, but it's always fun to look at. The other thing to think about with highs and lows, what drives the movement across, and I'm going to talk about North America because that's relevant to us here right now, is the jet stream. And that's what dictates where these highs and lows move across, or sometimes settle into. So you can actually have a system sitting there for a long period of time, producing long period of stable weather. That can be good, it can be bad. It all depends on the time of year. So we'll talk more about the influence of the weather a little further down the road here on the fishing success. So next slide. How do we put all of this together? And I'm going to focus on probably the most common system that we see and how it relates to a warm front and a cold front, and that's a low pressure system. So these systems set up as that low tracks generally in the easterly direction across the continent. Sometimes moves north, sometimes south, but generally it's moving to the east. In advance of that low, depending on where you're located, you typically have a leading edge or a warm front. And as that warm front slips through and advances through wherever you are, oftentimes it's going to bring, in advance that, you're going to have your northeast shifting to east winds, shifting to southeast. And oftentimes you're going to get a lot of precipitation associated with that, especially as you get closer to the center of the low. As you move more distal to it, you'll see less influence of the precipitation typically. And as that warm front passes through, the warm air slides over top of the cold air as it moves east, and you see a shift in the wind direction. That's where you see the wind start shifting to the south, to the southwest, and it'll set up, depending on how long that system takes to travel through, you get those southwest winds for a period of time. It's not until that cold air comes through and starts pushing that warm air up that you get that cold front line, which often, especially in the summertime, will trigger those thunderstorms or line of thunderstorms as that cold front moves through. And behind that cold front is where you see the wind shift. It's cooler, drier air, generally coming out of the north, but as it first presents, it's coming out of the northwest. And that's that wind shift, and you get that after any front goes through, especially after a thunderstorm, you'll feel that cold air. And then you might get a couple days where you have a cold front go through and it settles out. As the system moves through, the skies clear up, and you're back into somewhere into the next weather pattern at that point. So you're between systems. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to show it on the next slide, don't believe, but I'm going to overlay this onto a map and show how this can affect your decision making depending on where you live and how you pick your spots. So I think, we'll just jump to the next slide. The other thing to pick up on the mapping products, and these are available, I'm sure the National Weather Service has these in the States, Environment Canada has these in Canada, and they are available. You can pick them and you can forecast so many days out, so many hours out sometimes. The other thing I want to point out on this slide here is what's known as isobars. Okay, areas of equal pressure around the low. The main thing to think about here, the closer these isobars are together, or these rings, these black rings around the low, the closer they are together, the windier it's going to be. As you move away and those isobars start spreading out, you see less and less wind. So that's also an indicator of what the forecast will look like. But why I think these are so cool is, A, you can build confidence in a forecast and understand why the forecast is the way it is. And you can kind of start using these tools as your own resource to predict what the weather is going to be going forward with some confidence. One thing about weather, though, weather is prone to change. Again, I wouldn't go past that. I have a lot of confidence up to 5 days. Beyond that, it's not. It becomes a little bit more like holding a snake, trying to figure out what that forecast is going to be the further you go from where you're gripping onto it. So those are the kind of the key concepts. I want to talk about the fronts, the air masses, the fronts, reading the isobars, and understanding how the wind direction is impacted by that, and then also the wind speed, how the wind speed is impacted. So I think I'll show a couple of slides here real quick on just sort of some forecasting tools, and then we'll maybe take a break and before we jump into the next section of how to apply this. What I'm showing here is one of many tools. This here is one of my favorite tools. Now, as a flood forecaster, I relied heavily, even in Southern Ontario, Canada, relied heavily on the NOAA products that came out of the States. I still stand by that these are some of the absolute best products for predicting the timing of rain that's coming and the total amount of rain that's coming. And you can do this 6 hours out, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 and 5, and day 6 and 7. And note how NOAA does not put out a precip forecast past day 7 on their quantitative precipitation forecast site. But this is an extremely important tool that I use at work, but I also use this when it comes to planning ahead. I don't fish a lot of day trips or weekends anymore. It's mostly long trips. I'll talk about that at the back end of the presentation. But whether you're going for trying to pick your day to go, or whether you're trying to plan and prep for your trip a week out, extremely good tool to have. The other one, next slide I'll show is just it's just a US weather site. And this tool is great because what I can do, I can display multiple forecast models, the European on here, the global forecasting, the North American model. I put a Canadian model. What I can do is I can start comparing. What I'm looking for in the planning stage of any trip at this point is I'm looking for what I call congruency or matches in these models. If I start seeing that 3 out of 4 models or 4 out of 5 models are agreeing, I can go into it with a pretty high confidence that the forecast is going to shape up as these models are predicting. So the message here is don't just trust one forecast. Have a library of forecasts and look at them all and start seeing how those forecasts start merging and becoming congruent as you get into that forecast period. And if you're watching the forecast in real time and see how those forecast shifts and start aligning, you can come in with a pretty high rate of predictability as to whether you're going to get when you get on the water. So you want to break there for a sec?
Sure.
All right. You guys got a question? Anybody got a question about that?
So I got something here. My understanding is in a cold front situation, it actually puts pressure on a muskie swim bladder, and that's why they'll go deeper and kind of hunker down and not be active.
Brent, I don't know the physics of that exactly.
Okay.
But the response makes perfect sense. Yeah,
okay.
they typically do drop down, and as we know, they're just not as aggressive. Now, one thing I'll talk about, and maybe I say it later in my presentation, but the one thing that you notice, if you have a cold front comes through, the front's actually passed, but until those skies start opening up, the blue sky, you get those first, like those lines almost after the front lines of clouds, until that starts happening, the fishing can be incredibly good.
Yeah.
But see, once that sun sets in, the pressure starts the changes, the wind direction's changing, it's cold. That to me is when the cold front really sets in. And that's when certainly those fish start becoming a little less attainable.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry.
Cool.
This one here, I wanted to ask, like, looking at this here, Davin, when you're trying to set up, let's say, your trip, or like what time you're going to fish at specifically, whereabouts do you want to be specifically versus the low and the high pressure coming? Do you want to be somewhere in the middle, or do you want to be in front of the low pressure system coming in?
Yeah, if I had my preference, and I know it's sliding a couple down, we're going to get into the actual application of it, but if I'm picking my spot, first thing I have to look at is scale. So how far, how many miles or kilometers are from the low? If that scale there is 500 miles from the center of the low,
yeah,
I'm probably going to position myself a little lower, somewhere in that wedge there.
Okay.
Probably around between the W of warm air and probably the 1004 for the pressure bar. Yeah. Somewhere in there. Okay. That's ideal. And the longer I can space that out, the longer the bite window, the longer the opportunity of having the fish being on. As you get closer to the center of the low, it's this much smaller window. But there's kind of the contrast of this is if you're at the center of the low where you got that calm, it's almost like if you think of a low pressure system, think of a hurricane. The center of the low is really the eye of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
It's calm, often it's extremely low pressure, but for whatever reason, again, it comes down, is it the swim bladder? I don't know what it is, the mechanics of it, but I know those are incredibly good times. You get those overcast, calm conditions at that center can be absolutely dynamite for fish activity. So it's a lot of answers to your question, really, but it depends where you are.
Okay.
Good question. Good question. In the wedge. Be in the wedge.
Yeah, be in the wedge. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want me to keep rolling?
Sure.
Okay. So, it's a lot of things to think about we've talked about weather. How do we apply that to fishing? We have a number of constraints. Unless we're on the water every day, or our job is to be on the water. A couple of challenges that come to mind. One, trip duration. How much is our trip? 2 days, 3 days, a week? One thing I will suggest is if you're planning a trip, plan a minimum of 3, preferably 4 days to try to find somewhere in the feeding cycle and get that weather shift somewhere in there, because you fish some trophy waters, it's not unheard of to go 2 or 3 days without catching or seeing a fish. And then all of a sudden you have a window open up. You don't want that window to open up today or the evening or the morning after you leave.
Hey, Davin, can you send my wife a message and make sure that she knows that when I go on a fishing trip, I need to be at least 5 days?
Brent, I will absolutely do that for you.
Call it sex, right?
Yeah, no problem, guys.
We put it on the Ottawa River Muskie Factory website 25 years ago that if you want a trophy, we suggest that you book 3 days as a minimum, because you can, you book those days 6 months in advance, not knowing what the weather's going to be. And you can have, like you said, a couple days where blue skies, high pressure, it's just tough and you're not going to see a fish. But over a 3-day period, you are more than likely to go through the up and down of the high and low, and you will get your shot. You will get your windows, the system coming in, the system going out, and it'll be there for you.
Yeah,
absolutely. 3 days.
Great advice, John. Yeah, exactly. And I think what comes back to, Brent, to your concern with you texting your wife is, here's the question: how flexible are you?
Very.
Can you move your trip a day or two?
Brent's very flexible. Heather's not.
In all seriousness, I'm very fortunate, and if I need 4 or 5 days, then I've got it. So
yeah, like if you can cherry pick your days, you're going to do incredibly well. But the reality is, for most of you, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'll talk a little later about planning trips, but for me, I am the same way now. If I do trips, it's maybe 3 trips a year, and they're 5 to 6 days. I might get out a couple more times for day trips, maybe. Just the point of life I'm at right now, it's just not possible. I'm not complaining. I love it. Things are great, but there's just other priorities. But when you're starting to, consider your trip, your trip's coming up, the first thing you need to understand is just what the water temperature, what are the temperatures doing, especially relative to the time of year. So that to me is always a starting point. But then it comes down to, how do you get this information? A lot of us, if we've been fishing certain areas long enough, or certainly are intimate with the waters that we fish most frequently, we will have a pretty good idea, but we'll have reference contacts as well. So people we know that are in the area, that are on the water, that can, I'm not asking for spots or, what you catch your fish on, just, it's very simple questions. What are water temperatures now? What were they a week ago? There's web data out there, depending on where you're fishing. There are weather buoys in the Great Lakes. You have the Great Lakes forecasting system, where you can actually get a map that has the current or approximate water temperatures on the surface, but also it'll forecast ahead based on the weather patterns that they're in. And that's a NOAA product again. So that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. And that's an American weather agency that I still say is second to none as far as providing good quality data. And again, they don't go too far out.
So break that down a little more for us, Davin. What are you looking for? What's an ideal difference, ideal temperature or difference in temperature? What's a bad situation? What's a good situation?
Okay. So yeah, great question, John. It's time of year dependent. Certainly if I'm doing a June trip or late June trip, possibly early July trip, 2 things I want to see. One, I want to see a progressive temperature increase in the water. So again, I'm looking back, and we're going to bring this term hindcasting. It's on the slide, but I'm looking way out and I'm looking way back. Right. So I'm checking out the water temperatures 2-3 weeks before I go. But I'm also paying attention, going back to see, okay, what were temperatures, or was it a late spring? What were temperatures like in April? Was the ice off? And that gives me an idea as to the progression of where water temperatures ought to be and where they likely are based on the spring that we've had. So we're talking about the spring right now, where water should be warming up steadily. And that's what I expect to see. So if I'm planning a July trip on, again, it depends. If you have a colder Great Lakes, clear water, it's going to warm up a little slower. But if you have a more stained or turbid water, you're going to see the water temps heat up a little bit quicker. So I'm certainly looking at that, but I want to make sure they're kind of on pace. So I know for me, 69, 70 degrees is ideal to get the big females moving. I feel at that point, you probably got some pretty good wheat growth, but I have to, the caveat to that, I can't just say it's a temperature, because if the temperature just got there because we had a warm up over 3 days, yet it's been really cold for the 2 weeks preceding it, I also believe the fish haven't responded yet. And that's a slower process. So you have to look back at what the conditions were. And again, back to hindcasting. What were they 3 days ago? And were they stable for the 2 weeks previous? And that'll give you a better sense of where the fish are. Because the fish, yeah, they move based on temperature, but it's not because the temperature's at 75 one day that they're in the summer pattern. Because 3 days ago, it might have been 68, 69. They haven't got there. At least they're not active, right? I'm not going to be aggressively seeking them out in the summer spots at that point. So watching and then looking back on the forecast is extremely important for what was the weather like? When was the ice off? What the water temperature's been? When did the muskies spawn? Okay, muskies are spawning typically between 54 degrees Fahrenheit and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That'll actually extend on both ends, but that's a pretty good guide. And then you have to realize, no matter when the season opens, there's a recovery period for those fish before they recover, start moving, and start feeding. So if you know when the water temperatures are 60 degrees, maybe it's June 1st, maybe it's May 24th, you can start forecasting out now based on your hindcasting. And then you can predict what you'd expect to see set up when your trip comes. And if you're at your trip date, you just keep looking backwards. So that's the concept of hindcasting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't say I've ever looked at weather patterns, the previous weather patterns. You're always kind of looking ahead. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. Have you ever showed up somewhere and said, you should have been here yesterday or last week? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's information, but that's also very realistic.
What about temperatures on an individual body of water? Let me clarify that question a little further. In southern Ontario, eastern Ontario, we have access to the biggest bodies of musky water: St. Lawrence River, Great Lakes, Ottawa River, Lake St. Clair. These are all huge bodies of water. Temperature can vary on an individual lake. I went to school. Noah and I sat in on a Greg Emile seminar, salmon seminar, at the Ottawa Boat and Sportsman Show, and it took temperature to a level. Greg took temperature analysis to a level I have not seen, looking at satellite imagery, water clarity in different locations of the lake, finding silt lines, and there were temperatures different all over Lake Ontario for him as a salmon guide, and that dictated where he was going to go. So is that relevant? And I was wondering, watching Greg, am I missing something? Like, should we be more detailed? And so on a body of water, a bigger body of water, or even when the wind's been blowing in one direction for a while, he talked about that. The temperature is different at one end than the other. So do you think about that at all?
Yeah, if you certainly look on a like a Lake Ontario type scale or a Great Lakes scale, certainly you have high winds in a certain direction. You'll get some, I'm not calling it turnover, but you'll get almost like a rollover effect where the temperatures offshore push the warm water out and the cold water comes back, cycles back to the shoreline. You'll have that phenomena. But you can actually use, and that's why I said the Great Lakes forecasting system. Their model does incredibly well at taking those surface temperatures and modeling them based on the forecasted winds and air temperatures and how that warm water will actually move around a basin. And so it's based on those drivers. The other one is current. And of course, there's current in the lakes as well. The biggest thing to think about, if you think of clear and dirty water, like Lake Ontario, for instance, out in the open, it's deep, it's clear. It takes longer to warm up, but it takes longer to cool as well. Versus your stained water, like I'm thinking like an Ottawa River situation where you've got, more turbidity and stain in it. It will warm up because it'll collect the sun's energy and actually heat the water up quicker. But you're also going to lose those temperatures quicker in the fall. So water body and the chemistry and then the makeup of the water all impacts water temperature for sure. Changes are a lot quicker in stained water than temperature as it would be in clear water. But the other thing, just to cycle back to where I started with the temperature thing, is in the spring when we're expecting a warm up, the last thing you want to have arrive or seeing on your pre-arrival and at arrival are water temperatures that are dropping, because that pattern is not a normal pattern in the springtime, right?
And that's a shutdown. So that's a shutdown.
That's a shutdown. Similarly, in the fall, warming trends can be an equal shutdown. So we think about the other way.
That makes sense. I've had a couple different spurts throughout September and October where we've had like an Indian summer or, you know, really warm water, and I've gone 2 or 3 days without seeing a single fish. So that makes sense.
Yeah. And during those times, you really have to pin it down to, we'll talk more later about edges and really trying to stack your edges, because you might get one chance on those days.
Yeah.
So just to go back onto your Lake Ontario, when you're talking about Lake Ontario for an example there, I'm at the western end of Lake Ontario, and if we get a big east wind in the summertime, it blows all this warm surface water over here, and then it replaces the cold water underneath. It leaves on us. And if you get a couple of days of west wind, it'll blow all your surface water out, and then it gets replaced with cold water underneath. So that's that really changes your fishing around here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a turnover kind of, but like a rolling. The water rolls over.
Yep.
Yeah. Because when you displace that water's got to move back in to replace that water.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what it's doing. It's just a roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So this kind of leads in well to our talk here about warm-ups and cool downs. So springtime warm-up. Okay. So if you show up in June or July and water temps last week was 65, this week there's 75. And you get there and you're thinking, oh, wow, 75 degrees, summer pattern, bucktails, rip it, cover water. You have to maybe just slow down for a second and think, okay, yeah, the water's warmed up 10 degrees in a week, but have the fish responded to that in 1 week? And fish, I would say probably as much as anything, take time to go through those changes. And you start talking about the apex predator and a muskie, everything is amplified or magnified. So I think until they become comfortable and they've adapted to those changes, I think fishing is going to be extremely difficult. And if that's also the case, if the fish haven't progressed in their seasonal movements, well, where are they likely to be? Well, they're likely to be where they are at 65 degrees still. So they're probably hanging off the spawning bays. They're probably, and those emerging weeds, they're probably laying low at this point. So if you're going to go after those fish, you have to change your tactics. You're not going to be covering water to 1 million miles an hour, hitting 100 spots a day. So slower, more methodical. And then same thing in the fall. If you have an extreme cool down or really quick, or how many times have you gone fishing in the fall where the water's still 50 degrees, but it's -5 Celsius, or I don't know what that would be in Fahrenheit, be 20 Fahrenheit, possibly something like that. Yet the water's still warm. And but they haven't adapted that yet. It's they'll get there. And again, one thing I'll say about cool downs in the fall, I like cool downs in the fall, just like I like warm-ups in the spring, because that's the seasonal trend. That's the norm. That's what you'd expect. Anything that could bugger these fish up will bugger the fish up. Muskies are just temperamental and sensitive.
That those significant temperature drops in the fall, we're really excited to see those, because they're going to get the fish moving and active, and fish that are moving hit stuff.
Yeah. Well, sometimes on a plate, right? Yeah. So just another thing about temperatures to think about, surface temps. One thing I'll throw out there to think about, and it seems on a very minor scale here, but clear nights versus overcast nights. When you have overcast, you won't get the cooling. That overcast almost acts like a blanket and will keep those surface temperatures up. You get a really clear night or a frosty night, you'll see the temperatures drop. So something to pay attention to on surface temps based on how the night before was. What I will say, though, is those clear nights where you have a really good frost in the morning, yet it's going to be a sunny seasonal day, relatively calm. Those are my absolute favorite days. If I could pick a good hard frost and a sunny morning, And this doesn't just happen in my home waters, or this I've experienced this throughout pretty much everywhere I've went fishing. That those frosty mornings, and that's a pressure, that's a weather and a pressure change. But the fish are responding. You're into a positive feeding cycle at that point. And again, maybe it's just that I'm confident. That's what I'm going to talk about later, is those edges, but just being confident in a situation, having experienced a situation to capitalize on it. But for me, that has been a very big fish trigger. So,
Hey,
Noah, you got any questions from the audience?
I got a few. I'll put one up. Bruce Ogilvie says, for big fish, if you had to choose between prefrontal or stable weather, what would your choice be?
oh, it's a great question, and I'm going to touch on this in the slide. It would yes be prefrontal, but I'd be looking for the longest period of stable weather before that front came in. There's two differences depending on the pace those fronts are moving through. You either have a really intense short window, or you can have that prolonged window of 12, 24 hours even, I've seen, where you have really heightened fish activity. Yeah. So kind of answering to both in this case here, where, yeah, prefrontal, but I want the long drawn out period of stable weather, not just a little slicer window in that wedge that we had up on the map earlier. And I think one of the slides I'm going to talk about that lays out a weather system on a map will help explain that a little bit better. Okay, is this the one? This is perfect. Thank you, Noah.
No worries.
So I showed this image earlier where the low, but I didn't have locations on here. Now just understand, I'm going to show another map in a second here that lays it out. But I first want to lead with, here's our center of our low, here's our warm front, and here's our cold front. What the wind directions are generally doing, the precipitation patterns around it, and now putting some locations on a map. And those locations are in green. This is for Southern Ontario. In the Southwest, we have Lake St. Clair, and as far east as the Kawarthas in this example here. So that's about, would it be 200 miles tops, not even, probably 175 miles between the two. In this exact example right here, I'd put my money somewhere between Lake St. Clair and the W in warm air as my best opportunity. Now, if I want a longer drawn out window, I'm going to want to be more distant to the low pressure system, so further south. So even south of Lake St. Clair, if I was fishing muskies in Ohio or Pennsylvania, I'm probably going to have a better opportunity for a longer drawn out bite window. But as you get closer to the low, you're going to have more short, intense feeding windows. And again, if you just happen to be at the center of the low, that is a sweet spot. But that might be 4 or 6 hours that you get to experience those conditions. So the next slide I actually put on a map just to show reference. Plot up there, Noah. Yeah, there we go. So this is Southern Ontario. I'm going to have the next image is going to show just a much bigger North American scale. But what I wanted to show here is the warm front, the low, and the cold front. Now, if we take the warm front where you see a big horizontal loop around Kingston, Gananoque, and Thousand Islands area of the St. Lawrence, that's where the warm front is currently going through, all the way to the southwest where you have Lake St. Clair, where you're actually well in advance of that cold front. So if I had to put money on this here right now, the Niagara River and Lake St. Clair would be my two spots. That's not to say you're not going to get windows. I certainly think you have a good chance of getting a window up around the French River, which is closer to the low. And then the low itself looks like it's in the Sudbury area. If you're in that area and had some musky water, good spot to be. But you're really almost, maybe we look at the L for low as being local. If you're local, you can jump out and fish it. But for someone to drive from 150, 250 miles from Toronto, for say, to go fish that low in a day, it's such a small window. I wouldn't recommend it. As a muskie fisherman, we might actually do it though. But that's something to think about, is the low is local. And I actually just came up with that right now for the record, but it makes sense. You have more time the further you are away from that low. So I think that line with Niagara River and St. Clair is probably the spot I would be, because there's probably going to be a drawn out window there of maybe 8, 10, 12 hours of bite. So go to the next slide. All I'm doing here is I'm stretching out a giant low pressure system over Hudson Bay. And I've expanded that down through just into the northern US states. But what I'm showing here in these diagrams is the one, what that's saying is by the time the warm front passes on the right side, that red line, and the blue line catches up with the cold front, it's about 24 hours. If we go down to day 2 below that, that's about 48 hours. We can go further south. Now we're 72 hours. So that wedge or that opportunity to fish the prime spot probably roughly follows a line from the 1, 2, 3 down and then slightly to the west and curves kind of with the system. But that's where I would say your best bet is for timing. But also realize, again, the further you are away from that low is your bite window is going to be much bigger. So down to day 3 or even day 4 below that, you might get a stretch of 24 hours or 30 hours where the fishing is generally quite good. And that window will decrease as you head towards the low. So hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of tying everything together based on what is probably the most common weather system that we deal with in fishing.
I have a question for you, Davin. Looking at this, is the weather change, like the pressure, more severe in the 1 versus the 3? Or is it roughly the same?
No, it's a good question. It absolutely changes more the closer you get to the low. And that's where you're going to see the isobars going to be closer together when you look at the mapping, which means the wind speeds are going to be up. And you can't, the general direction the winds are going to be going because they're going to be moving towards the low. So yeah, the winds, an example here, the winds between 1 and 2 might be, 20 mile an hour gusting to 30. And as you go out, it's less intense because the speed the system is moving through is less. Right. So the speed of the system, and then there's the isobars and how tight those bars are that are really illustrating the wind speed. But generally, the closer to the low, the windier it's going to be until you get to the low where you're at that eye of the hurricane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So cold fronts. Generally, we hear of cold fronts. We think, okay, these are a bad thing generally for fishing. However, it depends on 2 things: the severity of the cold front and the seasonality of the cold front. The one thing what always triggers me, and I haven't done the last couple of years just because of my life at this point. I say life, it's all good stuff. Daughter being involved in sports and travel and family in the summertime. I don't get out as much, but what I would wait for most summers is that first big cold front in August that would start driving fish up shallow. To me, that was always the first trigger. They get out of their summer pattern, they start moving again. All of a sudden, they're to me more catchable. So I really focus on that 1 or 2 weeks after that first big cold front. So I'm looking for that one. Cold fronts in the fall, we talked about this earlier, much better than a cold front situation in the spring. I would absolutely would take a cold front in the fall over a warm front in the fall without question. I actually look for some cold fronts in the fall. Maybe not the most severe cold fronts, but something that would be pretty normal or considered stable for a weather pattern in October or November. The other one too about fronts, what I've always found done well on is I talked a little bit earlier about how when the cold front moves through, you've got the overcast skies, but eventually that makes way for clear cool north winds, cool air. And that's often very tough, but there's, for some reason, and I can't explain it, I'm just sharing my experiences. That first night around sunset after that cold front passes, you had your first bit of sun, seems to be a window. And when I say window, for me, it's been topwater fish, oddly enough. But it's something to, don't be defeated because you've been on the water all day in a cold front, or better yet, don't be on the water all day in the cold front. Save your energy for those prime times, whether it's the moon. Again, we're going to talk about stacking edges in a bit, but fishing smart. Don't beat yourself up. Yeah, I talked about the skies clearing. That really does drive the negativity of the fish. Winds from the east. We often heard winds from the east, fish bite the least. Not always true. In fact, I know some river systems that the east wind actually turns on the fish. And I don't just mean fish, but the big fish. And if I had to take any wind, I would take a southeast wind. But sorry, John, you had a question?
I think we're about to say the same thing.
Winds from the east bring out the beast on the Ottawa River. You're not going to have, probably not going to be a numbers day, but 1 or 2 shots at big fish with that east wind. I'm a lover of the east wind. The other thing on the Ottawa is, for whatever reason, east and west running with the river are both good winds. Anything north and anything south, generally lesser winds for us. I don't know if that's because they're going in the same direction of the river, but a lot of people fear that east wind. We get excited about it here.
Yeah. It changes the dynamics, right? The flow changes. And to me, a lot of times you get those, I don't know if the weed beds are in the Ottawa, I haven't fished the Ottawa, but you get those weed beds that are knocked over a lot of times, or certainly the current's got them knocked over. Then the current goes the other way because the wind's moving, or it stops, and it just changes the whole habitat. I think it opens it up. But regardless, east winds, especially on flowing systems, even the Great Lakes, I'm thinking of Lake St. Clair, done incredibly well on east winds on Lake St. Clair. Now, I'm not talking 20, 25 mile an hour east winds. I'm talking 10 mile an hour, 15 mile an hour, something that's comfortable and not crazy. But nonetheless, out of the east. The problem with east wind into some of those currents, like the Ottawa, I can imagine St. Lawrence the same way, is if the wind's too strong, it's a bathtub out there. You can't fish comfortably.
Yeah, east wind on the St. Lawrence means don't go out a lot of the time, because that wind going against that much current, you get severe waves and dangerous conditions.
Yeah, no, it's no good. But those light winds, 10 mile an hour, 10K, 15K, something like that, absolutely. I prefer that over anything else. The last point we've talked about a few times now, but back to Bruce's question earlier, the stable weather ahead of an approaching front. Again, it's always relative to the length of that stable weather, but I would take that stable weather in front of the front. That's the key.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Davin, as you're going through some of this stuff. I'm thinking back on past trips where we've had really good fishing, and then all of a sudden it shuts down or whatever. And a lot of it, I'm thinking about the moon phase before. And now when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about the weather patterns there, and it's really making a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, for sure, Brent. And I mean, it's worth paying attention to the moons as well, to an extent, which is a good lead up for one of my last slides. But yeah, there's more going on, right? There's more drivers than just the moon or sun, wherever that's at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so edges. This is really just sort of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the various wedges. May or may not be familiar with some of these, but the weather edges, environmental edges, traditional edges, solunar edges, so that's the sun and the moon, and then the personal edges finally. The idea is the more of these edges that we could stack up at one time, the better our success rate is going to be. Muskies are creatures of the edge. And we could sometimes interchange the word edge with changes, right? An edge, something hit the edge, and now it's changing. So we'll talk about that. We'll go to the weather ones first. Yeah, there we go. So some of the most basic ones that we've talked about already are fronts. We got the warm fronts, the cold fronts. The other ones are cloud cover. So if we have a period of a day or two, or even 3 days, or 4 days, 5 days, whatever it could be, of overcast conditions, that first window of opportunity where the sun breaks out and changes the light is an edge. If you can be on the water when you've had overcast conditions that change to sunny conditions, I'm not talking about a mix of sun and clouds here. I'm talking about overcast conditions breaking into sunshine, or days of sunshine that all of a sudden you have a bank of clouds come in and you now have cloud cover. These are two significant environmental changes in sunlight. Another one is wind direction, wind speed. As wind changes, not just direction, but speed, and you'll often see this in gusts on the water, or maybe it's a calm day, you're out in the water, and all of a sudden you feel a breeze and it just wisps across the water coming out of could be the north for all that matter. But something is happening. The reason there's a wind there, it's a pressure change. The environment is responding. Air is moving from one air mass to the other. Right? That's the breeze. The breeze is not for no other reason other than it's moving between different pressures. So that's a signal that there's been a change. And that's a time to pay attention and really be on your best spots, or at least save your energy so that you're as efficient as you can be. And if you have to, cover water at that point, because that the environment just told you there, you've got an edge, you've got an opportunity right now. Take advantage of it. It could be winds that have been really strong that all of a sudden die down, and that changes things. That's going to affect some of the environmental edges as well, like oxygen and water temperature and current, things like that. So a lot of these interplay off each other, so which is why I say stack your edges. Don't just pay attention to one or two edges. Look at the weather, look at the environment. They all relate. Air temperature. Again, air temperature is going to be changed based on the movement of air. Cool air coming in, warm air advancing, whatever it might be. So when you have those feelings on the water, pay attention to those. You don't need a thermometer or you don't need a barometer sometimes to feel these things. They just, you make a comment to yourself like, oh, that just got cold, or that just got warm. Oh, that just got humid. There's a change there, and respond to that. And then you've got your environmental edges. So what's happening in the water? You've got your structure. You've got your classic break lines, your reefs, whatever it might be. That's your structure. You got water temperature. Water temperature change. We talked about that. It will change with water clarity. And you will have examples where Lake St. Clair is a great example of this, where you have your turbid water coming in on, say, the South Shore, and it's slightly warmer than the water that's clear, that's a little further out, because it's heated up. Not only does that provide a temperature edge, but it also provides a clarity edge. And anything moving along that color seam in the water basically provides ambush structure for the muskies to feed. So they'll utilize that off-color water. In fact, if you're going to fish Lake St. Clair, you don't want to find the clear water. I don't know if you want to find chocolate milk either, but if you find something in that 2 to 4 foot visibility range, you're in the zone. But that's an edge as well. Oxygen drives a lot of things, and it's seasonal as well, depending on where the plant cycles are at. Plants are growing in the spring, giving off a lot of oxygen in the summer. Sure, in the evenings, the weed beds will actually consume some oxygen at some point, but provide oxygen again through the day. Weed beds start dying off. They start consuming oxygen in the fall. So little things like that to pay attention to. Not to say you can't catch muskies in brown pondweed. You certainly can. There's oxygen levels that'll drive some fish changes. There's current. Currents will change based on winds, based on water levels if you're in a river system. So paying attention to that. And current's a great thing, especially in a river system where the stronger the current gets, the more obvious the spots become. If you can see those currents and those seams, you can actually start, especially the water's higher and flowing faster, you can start predicting with more certainty where, not just in the eddies, but where those fish are going to stack up within the eddies themselves. Another edge is bait fish. Simply falling, if you're fishing more pelagic or open water systems, one of your best edges becomes bait fish, and seeing how the bait fish are responding. Are they tight balls? Are they expanding? Can you tell if a predator's in there actually feeding on the bait and the bait ball's exploding? All good signs, especially when you see the bait balls exploding. So it tells you that something's in there feeding. It's probably triggering the whole food chain. So paying attention to those little things that if you're trolling, you're driving along and really nothing's happening, but all of a sudden you see a bait ball or you see a bunch of clumps of bait, especially spread out. Picture that as a structural edge, but the bait fish is the structure. So that's weather and edges. We'll jump to the next couple here real quick. Just for the photic zone. Do you want to take questions before this?
I was just going to make a comment that we use the app Windy. There's a lot of different apps out there. Windy's a good one to track your wind for the day. And I use that one to know where your wind's going to be at. But if there's going to be a change in wind direction or a change in wind intensity, really trying to be in a kill zone in a really good area when that happens is an absolute key. That's the same as a lunar peak. If you know that wind is going to change, and ironically, there are so many times where we were in an area expecting the wind to change. We catch a fish, and then that gust comes up right after. The wind changes right after. It's like the fish feel that barometric pressure change that's coming in before you do, and they react. They react on that, not necessarily waiting to it. Does that make sense, Davin?
It makes sense, and I think they're totally in tune to that. Yeah, I think that's probably, and I think they're more in tune to it than we are. And I can't explain. I have no idea, but it happens over and over again.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Sorry, I was gonna say one thing on that about the Windy app. That's probably my number one tool every time I go out. I use a variety of weather apps to see different things, but the Windy app will tell me. It'll tell me the atmospheric pressure and what it's going to be. It'll tell me the exact wind direction, the temperature, and it'll show me my moon peaks. So I can use the one app to give me a rough judgment of everything. And then I use, obviously, Weather Network or whatever other weather app to see other things, but mostly Windy to give me an accurate, that's what I rely on the most, to give me an accurate view of what's going to come. So
Windy is great too, and know what to that I'll add as well, that you can stack different forecasts and compare forecasts on Windy, which is great. So again, more certainty. But yeah, I do love it. And John, you led into this too. I love seeing an east wind or a southeast wind shift to west northwest in a matter of hours. That's one of those windows. If you're planning your day and you know it's coming some point during the day, at least it's predicting that, 100% of the time you want to be on the water. Yeah, one of the best windows. Okay. We go into the photic zone?
Yes.
Okay. This is an edge that I'm sharing. I'm not taking credit for it, but I will take credit for the drawing. I'm not much of an artist on the computer, but I did draw this one. I actually learned this one here. If you follow Dick Pearson, this is where I borrowed this concept from. But I don't feel like it's gotten a whole lot of attention over the years. Maybe it did 25 years, 30 years ago. But this concept of the photic zone, and what that really is, it's the depth of sunlight penetration into the water column. So what that drives is, there's a couple key things here to think about. One is that gives us an idea at the depth of which the vegetation is going to grow. Okay. So with that, the sunlight gets down there. You got the photosynthesis. You got the weed beds are coming alive. They're giving out oxygen, providing cover and habitat. That's the number one driver. The number two, though, is when you're just below the photic zone of the depth of sunlight penetration, that provides predator species, muskies included, of course, the perfect ambush zone to hang out below that photic zone. And of course, the eyes are on the top of the head, so they're looking up and out, is utilizing that zone to ambush their prey. So whatever's swimming along in the upper water column, or maybe just above the photic zone, maybe unsuspecting that there's a muskie 5-10 feet down, it's an opportunistic way for muskies to feed. So how I would apply that fishing is I would use a Suick disc. And what this disc is, it can be a lid from a margarine container or butter container, whatever. But it needs to have 4 quadrants, 2 white and 2 black, just like the illustration there. There needs to be a weight on it for it to go down, and then a measuring tape of some sort that you can actually get a measurement of when you're going to take your reading. And how you take your reading with a Suick disc is you drop it down slowly in the water column, looking down, and when you can no longer discern the white from black on that disc, note your depth. And if that depth is 3 meters or 10 feet, it's real easy. You just take that number and multiply it by about 2. It's actually slightly less from what I've heard, but about 2. Keep it simple. And now you're looking at 6 meters or 20 feet. And that's your photic zone. So my recommendation, that if I'm going to be trolling open water in this example, I'm never going to run my bait below 20 feet. I'm probably going to run about 15 feet because I want to be just above the photic zone, because my belief is that those muskies that are out in the open water, again, this is also time of season dependent as well. I'll caveat that. I'm talking summertime and into the fall. not early season, because fish respond differently in open water early season. However, these fish are down there, maybe 25 feet down, and they're looking up and feeding at any opportunity that's in that photic zone. So yeah, so probably running your baits 15 feet down. It could be 80 feet of water, it could be 40 feet of water, but I wouldn't go below 15 feet probably if I had a 20-foot photic zone, because I'm anticipating those fish are going to be at the 20-foot level. I want to be above their heads. I don't want to be below those fish. Now, on some lakes that are more stained, that photic zone might be 10 feet total. Again, no need in that case, no need to run your bait more than 6-7 feet down, ever, because you're in the zone in open water. So that concept is extremely important to me. That is a very significant edge that's not obvious on the surface, but is extremely relevant to the fish in the water column. And you can make these secchi discs at home. Be a little bit of a scientist, but if you know your water, if you have a home water, you probably know the visibility is generally already 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, whatever. And you probably know the numbers. But if you're traveling and moving around, or you've had a major runoff event, a bunch of sediment and stuff moving into the lake or river, it changes that photic zone, then at least you have the tool to adapt to that. So that's photic zone, but that's one of the edges I really wanted to point out. So we want to go to the next slide. Yeah, perfect. Traditional edges, oftentimes, and I'm going to go back to Dick Pearson again, because he wrote the book on edges and applying edges. But some examples: a weed line is a very obvious edge, but there's also weed depth changes, or weed species changes as you go through the depth of the water, or perhaps it's the substrate that drives the weeds, which is also an indication of perhaps the substrate changes. You go from a mud to a sand and that's gonna drive. So substrate is very important, in that fish use different substrates as an edge as well, but also that also drives the weeds and the weed species that are using it, depending on the depth above it. Rocks, reefs, the traditional break lines into points, inside turns, things like that, all traditional edges. The other edge is the water surface. So if you think of the oxygenation, the mixing, the chaos and turmoil, as Dick Pearson says, happening on the surface, current, all these things, all drivers to get the food chain going, and don't want to overlook the water surface. I'm not saying you have to use topwater baits. You can run baits a foot or two below the surface as well, but you're fishing that water surface basically. So lunar edges, this is the sun, this is the moon, moonrise, moonset. This information is all available to us, all good excuses to be on the water. I put a lot of weight in the moon underfoot and moon overhead. So those are the majors. I should have said that the moonrise and the moonset are the minors, but I do put a lot more weight in being on the water during those major periods. Sunrise and sunset can be really good. The apogee, perigee, like the distance the moon is from the earth, intensifies those peaks. Certainly, we've all heard the full moon, new moon, and how that triggers fish activity. I'm still putting my money on moon underfoot and moon overhead, and then moonrise, moonset, and then finally full moon, new moon. I don't plan trips around the full moon or new moon anymore. If I can, sure, I'll take it. But what I find is nowadays there's so much more traffic on the water during a full moon or new moon period. I'd rather have it quieter and more fish to myself, or at least have the spots to myself, rather than competing for spots and timing of spots. So I think that affects success. I really do. The ultimate one for me, though, is the personal edge, and how I've changed my fishing style over 25 years now for muskies is I don't fish 14, 16-hour days anymore. I don't do it, and it serves me no benefit. What I do is I incorporate sometimes 2, possibly 3 breaks over that same 16, 18-hour period, where I come in and I reset. So I'm not exhausted when I'm on the water. Mentally, I'm reset. And in my mind, every time I go back out again, because I know I'm going back out during either it's a weather change, some kind of peak period, my confidence is fully renewed, and I'm on the top of my game when I get back out there. So that's why I take the breaks. It really breaks it up. I basically have 3 fishing trips in each day at that point. So if things aren't going well, I get to reset. But ultimately, I'm not tired at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, when perhaps you get your one chance to catch a fish, you're not sleeping at the wheel. So that's a really important piece to being successful, is managing your time, taking breaks, watching your windows, but also having an awareness of what's going on in the environment around you, paying attention to the weather changes, paying attention to what you're seeing on the water, and then follow your instincts. If you ever have a moment where something creeps into your mind and says, I should probably try this. I wonder if I should try this right now. What I believe is that is your mind processing in the back of your mind your experience, and it's telling you something. So listen to those instincts. If it's telling you to move or go try something, do it. Oftentimes pays off in a big way. But ultimately, the biggest edge is fishing with confidence. And you combine all these things, it just adds to your confidence level. And again, it's all about stacking edges and having as many edges in place as possible to be successful. I do have a little summary slide I'll talk about in a second, but that's really the concept of all these edges. So I don't know if there are questions on any of these edges before we move on.
Any questions from the viewers, Noah?
I got a question not quite relating to exactly what Davin was saying, but it's more of a Suick question. We can answer it.
Go ahead, guys.
An early season question. Do you use the 7-inch Suick in the spring or just use the bigger ones?
Who's this question for?
Anybody that wants to answer it.
I've got. I'll jump in on this one right now. I learned years ago that a muskie will eat a 14-inch walleye in the spring, as you will in the fall. When I was out walleye fishing, going to grab one side of the boat and having a 40-inch muskie come up and try to grab it, and then I've got lots of fish on a Frankensuick in the spring. Now then again, if it's a really late spring like we have this year here in Southern Ontario, I'm probably going to I'll still throw a few bigger baits, but I'm going to start throwing a few smaller ones as well, just because the season's a little bit farther behind, and we're not going to find the weed beds and whatnot that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think us snobby Canadians figure we're fishing for big fish, and so we like to throw big baits a lot more. And if there's one thing we've learned from some of the really great Wisconsin guests that we've had on here, in fact, all three of our Wisconsin guests like to throw small Suicks a lot more than we do, and they do really well on them. So that's my takeaway from the seminar series this year is absolutely there's times when I should have more confidence in the smaller lures, and I do from listening to guys who know and have the pictures to prove it. So
and that's probably why I just ordered a few smaller 7-inch Suicks and set a rod up for it. So
yeah, our American brothers telling us, hey, you guys should be throwing this stuff. You're missing something. Yeah.
After having Steve Hiding on there, it made me think about a few things.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. I don't even have a 7-inch Suick, so there you go. So, but I'm a big bait. I'm a big bait early and slow. So.
Yeah, I'm more speed and the big bait, but yeah, it's tough to change when you're old. But I'm going to give it a try.
It's confidence, right?
Yeah, like and one thing you said there, Gavin, earlier. If you have confidence in something, you're going to work that bait a little more thorough. You're going to work it a little harder. You're going to work it in the right spots. And if you have confidence in something, it's huge. It's huge.
Well, one of my favorite Suicks was I think it was called Strawberry. Does that color make sense? Like it was like a pinkish.
White with red spots and little.
No, it didn't have spots on it. It was so it's an old one, but there's no paint left on it. There's a little bit of paint left on it, but I don't think they care what color the paint is.
Throw it until there's nothing left on it. That's the right bait.
Exactly it. Yeah, I think I knew what color it was originally, but anyhow.
I love this next slide already. Are the cows laying down when you're driving to your fishing spot, or are they standing up?
Extremely important. So awareness. You can get a lot of clues. So if I'm at a cottage or a cabin somewhere and I wake up in the morning and the squirrels are chirping and running around, the turtles are out, activities up, there's an otter out there, there's a beaver, things are happening, life's happening. I'm getting up and I'm getting on the water pretty quick. If I wake up in the morning and there's not much going on, I'm not hearing anything. That bird activity, everything is down. I'm not rushing to get on the water. I'm going to pick my windows that day, probably. Likewise, on the drive, if I'm driving up and I have the opportunity to drive that morning, or if I'm doing a day trip, I'm paying really close attention to what the cows are doing in the fields. Am I seeing deer? Am I seeing turkeys? Am I seeing hawks? Am I seeing birds of prey? Am I seeing a lot of life? If that's the case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in there and I'm going to fish hard. I'm going to fish fast. If I see that I can see a bear sleeping on a log, I can tell you right there, I'm going to change my tactics right off the bat. I'm going to fish slow and methodical and go to my best spots and try to put as much confidence in my favor as possible there. The other thing too is again, trust your gut. I talked about the instincts, but trust your gut. If you're feeling something's working or it's going to work, you got to go with it. And again, if you feel like it's not working, take a break.
Yeah, sometimes that little mental reset is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
always like to think of it as several fishing trips in a day sometimes.
Dean put up a really good question, and this is something I think of as well. He asked, what can I take from a group of loons in the water or a group of seagulls? I'll let one of you guys answer that one.
Yeah. Do you want me to start?
Go ahead. Well, let's hear your take on it.
Yeah, I think for me, sorry, I got a cat that's trying to jump up on the screen here right now. For me, it depends what those loons are doing. If they're being a happy family, just hanging out, moving from spot to spot, I'm probably not too excited. However, if I see those loons underwater or diving, clearly in a feeding behavior, I'm all over it.
Yeah,
100%. Same with a group of seagulls. What are the seagulls doing? Are they just sitting, or are they feeding? And that's probably the biggest trigger right there, is just seeing what they're actually doing.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I take it too. If I see loons that are fishing or hunting for fish and diving, it's game time. Like, they're doing that, so are the fish. But yeah, a bunch of seagulls, like if I just see them laying in the water, I usually don't catch fish when that happens. So that's the pattern I've put together over the years.
That's the question. Yeah, exactly. Why are the seagulls there?
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Should we go to the next slide?
Yeah. Absolutely. It kind of puts it all together here, right? So, okay. Well, I've titled this one, "You Book the Trip, but Not the Weather." And this is kind of my theory. And again, why I talk about how important it is to book 3 or 4 day trips at a minimum. Because if you're going the distance, you want to give yourself the best opportunities at catching fish. So the weather's maybe not cooperating. The bite's been slower. The bite looks like it's going to be slow. How can you put the odds in your favor? And we're going to start with just stacking your edges. You need to go back to the weather, the structure, the personal edge, any edge you can possibly think of, and combine multiple edges at one time. Is it so lunar? Maybe it's the moon phase. Stack those up to your advantage. The more you can pile on top of each other, the better the odds of you triggering a strike. Then you have to think about confidence. And for me, a lot of it is I have my confidence spots that I know hold fish most of the time. I'm going to go there. I'm going to focus on those spots. I'm not going to cover water. Certainly the worst time to be searching out new spots is during a poor weather pattern or a poor bite. The time to be learning spots, and it's hard to train ourselves to do this, but the hardest part is fish new spots when you're moving between spots on a good bite, because that's where you're going to learn. The likelihood of seeing a fish show up are way higher. And then you're not writing off spots by fishing a new spot in a poor bite. The tendency then is to write off, I didn't see a fish there. I've been there twice now. It's no good. But it looks good. But no, I'm not going back. We're doing a disservice there by doing that. The other one is confidence baits. So you know your certain styles of baits are going to fit the spot, maybe fish the water body or fit the water body you're fishing. If you can stack edges, fish your confidence spots, fish your confidence baits, how you know you're effective at using those baits, maybe just go into the end of your tackle box. So grab that bait that's the most chewed up bait you can find at that time. That's probably the bait to throw, especially when things are tough. And the other one is squeeze the fish. And what I mean by that is try to eliminate water. And often, depending on the water body I'm fishing, what that means is getting in shallow and reducing the amount of water between the water surface and the potential strike zone of that fish. I want baits to intercept across that strike zone as much as possible. And of course, these fish aren't high percentage, they're low number fish. But if we think about the strike zone or the window of opportunity on a fish, if they're not aggressive, that might be the size of a billiard ball. But if they're aggressive and feeding, I always kind of go back to the comic strips where you have that cloud with a comment above the person's head. That's kind of like the strike window. If it's the size of a bedroom, if the fish are aggressive, you don't need to squeeze the fish as much because your odds of intercepting fish are much higher. So the odds of hitting a low activity level, you really got to get your bait in front of a fish. So you got to really minimize the amount of water that you're fishing. So again, confident spots, confident baits, and get in there and try to find the fish on the spot you know the fish are sitting. So that's how you can apply absolutely everything to be more successful on the water.
I'm definitely going to have to go back over and listen to this and take some notes.
Sunset looks beautiful, by the way.
Pardon me?
Sunset looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we just off to my right here, we got the sun setting, and it's looking over the pier there. It's pretty nice.
Awesome.
And you are just a silhouette, my friend, and you look beautiful too.
Oh, my hair's a mess right now, John.
So I'm gonna share this. There's 2 slides here. In past presentations, I've called it lunar lunacy, but what I want to look at real quick as I kind of leave this presentation is you've got full moon and new moon, and as many would argue, these are probably the prime times to catch trophy fish or the most fish. What I want to share though is some data from Muskies Canada. The one thing about Muskies Canada, I've been the quote unquote keeper of the logs now for over 20 years. But the log program data, we have digital data going back to 1990 right now. So that's what's been incorporated into this database. And for members of Muskies Canada, you can actually go onto the website. And if you're a participant in the log program, you can start playing with numbers and doing different outputs to try to find different stats on water bodies, average fish size, all sorts of different metrics on these. It's really quite incredible. One thing I'll say is that we're talking, I think the number's now over 35,000 muskies in the system.
Wow.
What's unique about Muskies Canada versus Muskies Inc. is that Muskies Canada has catch per unit effort data on nearly all of our fish. So we know that when every fish gets entered, we know how many hours that angler fished that day. And it starts becoming meaningful as a useful metric for effort. And that's where I'll show these next 2 slides, because what I want to show here is the hours per fish by moon phase. We would expect, based on everything we've heard and read, that we would see lower hours per fish for the new moons and the full moons. I've highlighted in red the new moon and the full moon. What you'll notice right away is that it's pretty consistent in the middle of, doesn't really stand out. So oftentimes the next comment is, well, they must be bigger fish that we're getting during the full moons and new moons, because that would make sense. So we run the same numbers on the next slide, and we can see that the full moon and the new moon, once again, do not stand out. So there's no bias here. It's not that we're fishing, we're using all of our data by moon phase to see what those average lengths are and the average time per fish. And what I want to point out is on here, we see no statistical difference based on the data that we've run up. And that's just based on 35,000 fish. Might be a little bit off the number now from last year, but that's a significant amount of fish with catch data tied to it. So I wanted to throw that out there because earlier I talked about solunar edges. If I had to pick, again, I'll reiterate, I'm going to really focus on the majors, so the moon underfoot and the moon overhead. Secondary, I look at the minors, so that's the moon rise, moon set. And then third, I'm going to consider the full moon, new moon, because I'm not throwing it out. I'm just saying it's not the biggest driver from what I'm seeing, and certainly from my experience.
Interesting.
100%. 100%. Lunar lunacy, the moons are for the fishermen much more than they're for the fish in the muskie world.
Yeah. And I think good point, John. The muskie world, because these are apex predators. I think any of these drivers, any of these edges apply more to muskies than, say, a smallmouth or a largemouth bass.
I think there's a statistic that 79% of all world record fish by species are caught within 3 days of a full moon. So that it does seem, if that's right, and I'll go ask Google after. If that's right, then it applies much more to the broad range of fish, broad spectrum, than it does to our apex predator. This is muskie specific data. So
this is exactly right. And to that point too, there's probably influences based on water body sizes. I think the fish in the oceans you see more tides, more effect in a larger water body than you would in a smaller body of water. So the full moon, it makes sense.
Yeah, I was surprised years ago when I first fished with Jim Sarek. We were arranging a trip, and I said, "You want a new moon or a full moon?" And no, it's all about the weather. It's gonna be what it's gonna be when I show up. You know, that moon doesn't matter a bit to him. So if it doesn't matter to him, you should probably take that to the bank.
Yeah, that's fair.
The logs show it. Fantastic.
All right. I have a special guest. Another one. Should we bring him on?
Bring him in.
We made him wait.
How's it going, Mike?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Hey, Mike.
Good, thank you.
Good.
We're doing good, Mike.
Good. Glad to hear.
If anybody doesn't know, it's Mike Suick that we have as a special guest here tonight for the final episode of the Suick Seminar Series for 2026.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to rewatch this myself, guys, because there's a lot of information here that we went over tonight. That was more than I could take in at one time.
Usually, quite often, I'm taking notes, but as you can see, I'm down on the boat right now, and I got my phone here, and that's it. I can't take any notes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, a ton of information, and thank you, Davin. Really appreciate that. Like John says, every time we listen to you, we learn something new.
Oh, my pleasure as always.
Yeah.
Yep. No, thank you. I appreciate it as well, Davin. That was
you're
great.
very welcome.
Honestly, I feel like they would call it a noob listening to you. It's just it's insane. I'm like, it's crazy. Yeah.
And Noah's the smart one. And Noah's the smart one out of us.
In the grand scheme of things, you got a couple granddads here, and you are a noob with a long way to go. So consider yourself really lucky to have been part of this. And there's so much good information to take to the bank. It's science-based, it's log-based, photic zone, hind casting.
Yeah.
Just outside the box concepts for us musky fishermen, and we all want the edge. They're creatures of the edge, and we want the edge. So knowing this stuff is it. What do you want to tell us about 2026, Mike? What are you looking forward to?
Well, it's a lot of stuff happening. It's been an interesting start to the year, I guess. So far all is good. Our season's just getting started here, so we don't have too much fishing in yet, just a couple weeks. So we'll see. It's going to be a good year.
Have you been muskie fishing already?
Yeah. We've been open for about 2 weeks, so I got out a couple times already.
Okay.
So haven't seen anything yet, but we're working.
Awesome.
Okay. Good on you. This Saturday is our first chance, and there's a peak at 4:58 in the morning, and Noah and I are going to be out there shortly after 4, pounding right through that on the opening morning. So
you have no idea what that really means, because John doesn't get up early in the morning ever.
I'm not going to be awake for it, and Noah's going to drive the vehicle and the boat and set everything up for us. But
he called me. He's like, "Oh, you want to go to the or make it for the 458 peak?" I'm like, "Wait, I've never heard that before."
Strangely motivated. I don't know what's going on. Strangely motivated. So yeah, we're going to get our first. We're going to get our first shot on Saturday. Although I don't know if you saw the introduction earlier, Noah released a muskie about an hour before the show started out, throwing a small Williams wobbler in a bay chuck for pike. So we are on the board a little bit.
Yeah.
Terrific. I guess I just want to say thanks, Mike. We've done this for a couple of years now. We have a really good time being here, and the feedback is just great for us. We're the right people, we think, to be here. Suick was one of the first lures that was introduced to me back in the mid 70s. I started guiding in 1977, and you threw hair or wood, and wood was a Suick. And so, I saw 77 till next year, 50 years. 50 years with the Suick. That's a special anniversary. So
wow.
Just a privilege to be a part of your team and to have this opportunity to present on your behalf. So thanks.
I appreciate that, John, and I can't thank you guys enough as well, and all of our guests. I mean, I think it's been 2 years, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from this, and people notice it and watch, and it's working out really, really well. So I can't thank you guys all enough.
Oh, it's absolutely our pleasure. I know that. Is there anything? We've been doing this for 2 years. Anything you want to? You talked to John a bit. We talked quite a bit. Anything you want to say to Noah there, Mike?
Yeah. So I guess Noah, you came on this year and did kind of the back end of this stuff, and I think Brent and I were talking, and I think that we need to have you on our pro staff if you would accept. That's an area we're definitely missing. So
I would love to be on your pro staff 100%. Well, that would be a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. That'd
be great.
That definitely needs to happen. So
that was a good move, Mike, because that kid is hot. He's young and he's still wet behind the ears, and he's good already. So we're gonna make him better, and then we're just gonna ride his coattails into the sunset.
There we go.
And the first thing you need to do, Noah, is answer those emails I sent you.
Yes, I will answer them. Started throwing Suicks a whole bunch recently, and they've just been through the board. I got a really nice fish with a client on a Franken Suick last fall, and
awesome.
Honestly, since that moment, it was just that was just an awesome moment. Yeah.
Awesome. That's what we like to hear, Noah.
Yeah.
So,
welcome aboard, Noah.
Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure being part of the Suick Seminar Series too. Honestly, I think we all had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah. Always look forward to it.
Yep. Well, you guys did a great job.
You're a very important part of it, Noah, because John and I are technical idiots.
we all know
that. No show. So yeah, thanks, Noah, and much deserved. And what we're going to do at the Ottawa River Muskie Factory this year is put a counter on our website, the Suick counter. And we are going to catch at least 50 muskies between us. And when we have a good one, which is going to be pretty regularly, we're gonna throw it over on the Suick site with the number that it is. But if people want to follow along, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. We're going to catch 50 fish on Suicks this year. So
that's awesome.
Mark my word, there will always be a Suick going, and because that's a dive and rise bait. That's one bait that no matter what the mood of the fish is, a fish will always hit a Suick or a glide or whatever that is. As where with a bucktail, you want a more active fish to target that. So it's a Suick's always going to be going in my boat, and it usually always is. So
fantastic.
We'll hit that 50 number for sure, John.
Easily. 50's the low number, but I'm looking forward to seeing how much farther we go past
Yeah.
we go past that and maybe 3 digits. Maybe we'll get to 3 digits. We'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Any final thoughts, anyone?
I just, you know what, it's been a lot of fun doing this again this year, and you know, I'd look forward to what next year brings with it.
Yeah. Me as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe Davin, thank you for being here. We're all going to go back and watch this a couple times and take much more detailed notes ourselves. So really a treat to get to talk to you and listen to you again. Mike, to see your smiling face. We didn't have you on as a guest this year, and the show that we did with you last year, I gave it a plug at the start of the show. That's one of the favorite shows that we've done. The pictures that you brought on and the stories, the historical stories that you told were epic. Some of them I'd never heard before. So much learning. And I suggest people go back to our YouTube channel. That episode is still there, and it's a good one. Mike Suick knows what he's talking about, everybody. There you go. So
We got to. I know I talked to your dad, Steve, a few times about this, Mike, but we got to get you and your dad down to the Ottawa River in the fall.
Yeah. Somehow we got to make that happen. So that's an area we've never been to, either of us.
Yeah, we'll treat, as Crash Mullen said at the World Muskie Hunt back in the early '90s. We'll treat you so many ways you're bound to like one of them.
all right, Crash. Well, a pleasure, everyone. What are we? An hour and 37 minutes for tonight. It's the seasonal record. It's our longest show of the year. We shoot for an hour. We've never even been close, but 137 is a record. So that's some really good muskie talk tonight, guys. We'll leave it with that. To everybody out there and everybody out there listening, thanks for coming along for the ride with us. This is
Thank you.
We do this for you.
Yeah, to everybody that tunes in, we really appreciate it, and thank you, and thank you again, Davin.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Congratulations on the series, Mike. Nice meeting you, and thanks for having me on, everyone. It was a great discussion.
Okay, until the next Suick seminar episode, which I don't know, we did these 5. I was thinking there probably should be a summer or a fall one. We'll go away and talk about that over a beverage when we get offline here and see what we do. So till next time, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Sure.